Today, we're going to be talking about 5 tips that every quarterback needs to know, okay? So we're going to be focusing on the 5 main things that I feel quarterbacks need to know mechanically about throwing the ball, how you guys can be a more efficient passer and a more efficient quarterback. But also one of the main things that quarterbacks need to know is how to read defenses. Fellas, if you want 250-plus defensive coverage breakdowns, you see the examples that I have for you here. It's how to beat two-man, cover one concept, cover three buzz, all of the things you need to know about reading defenses. Check out that very first link in the description for 250-plus already made defensive coverage breakdowns. Learn how to read defenses. Very first link in the description. We have 4 new uploads every single week, and it's all based around how to read defenses. Breakdowns just like this, but it's all based around the IQ of the position. Hope to get you guys on that soon. Again, very first link in the description. Let's get started. So first things first, we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers here, and we're going to talk about hip and shoulder dissociation. So that's the first tip. That's what so many quarterbacks struggle with. So let's watch the thing full speed. So Rodgers does a great job of kind of like changing up this arm angle here, but we're mainly going to be focusing on his hips and his shoulders and how you can make this throw. So if you guys have been watching this channel, you know this. If you're new to this channel from this video, then you might not have heard me talk about this, but your hips are what makes the throw for you, right? The hips are probably the most important aspect of playing quarterback and separating your upper half from your lower half because it creates this thing called torque. So what torque comes from is you see when Rodgers goes to throw, I want to see how quick his front stride is, right? He gets that front foot down, and when his front foot is going down, his shoulders are going back. He's in that backstroke, right? And that front shoulder, like the back of that front shoulder just slightly closes, right? That slight close is that coil. You see how you can kind of see that separation with lower and upper right here. Now, what's going to happen is we got to be able to transfer weight to my front leg to allow my front hip to shoot through and your back hip to rip through. So we're rotational down almost like an axis down the middle of my back. You almost want to pretend like there's a pole going down the middle of your back. So you see how when he gets that front foot down, his hips are starting to rotate through, and you see how much that front hip is able to come through. Now, your front hip isn't going to be able to rotate if you don't transfer weight to your front leg. So if you get that front foot down, but let's say your weight is shifted back and you're here and you're almost like leaning back and that front foot doesn't get weight. You see how Rodgers takes this like kind of pop step right there, that little like double step. That's a great tool for quarterbacks to use. I'm not saying every quarterback has to do that because you can transfer weight without taking a pop step, but that pop step, that little double hop that Rodgers takes is a great way for you to actually get weight to your front leg and allow this hip to go through. Because if you're not transferring weight, like let's say you're here and you're just stepping with that front foot, not driving from this back foot and driving your hip around, your back leg will trail. And then when your back leg trails behind, what are you going to do? Because your hips aren't rotating, you're going to swing your shoulders out of the throw. So that brings me to my next point, which is what we're going to talk about is torque, right? Being able to have torque. Torque is, again, when I said your front foot gets down, your shoulders are back, and that hip drive creates that coil to the motion. The hip drive is what brings this football through, right? So now what a lot of people like to do is in this case, when they're rotating through with their hips, they like to bring their shoulders through at the exact same time. They like to swing their elbow down. They like to swing their shoulder out wide. To get that nice snappiness to the motion, your front hand almost wants to like stay tight to your frame. You don't see any NFL quarterbacks with their front hand down by their hip. You don't see any NFL quarterbacks with this front shoulder facing behind them when they throw. They all have that square position. They're all able to stay shoulders parallel, hips parallel, and you see how you're able to draw a square with their entire body because their hips are what's making this throw. It's not about your shoulders. It's not about your arm. It's all about hips, hip drive, leg drive, and being able to produce torque. And when that hand comes back to your chest, you get that like whip to the motion. That's why Rodgers' release is so quick. You get that whip because his hips are what's rotating. Hand goes back to his chest so he keeps a good release point, but also so that helps you with torque, okay? It's able to produce torque when that hand goes back. Not necessarily pull back to your chest, but you just leave it at your chest. His elbow doesn't swing down. His shoulder doesn't open up. He's able to stay square the entire time. When you're able to stay square, you will have a more accurate release point too. So what I mean by that is when your front elbow swings down, your body's split down a midline. What do you think your right arm is going to do? It's going to shoot up in the air. And then when you swing your shoulder way out this way, what do you think your arm's going to do? It's going to come outside of your frame, right? So it's all about having a consistent release point, keeping your upper half square, hips and shoulders parallel to the target. Don't let your elbow swing, and have that hip and shoulder dissociation. Hip and shoulder dissociation is just when you have hips driving towards the target and your front shoulder slightly closes, turning the back of that front shoulder to create that whip of the motion, okay? So let's watch this thing again full speed one more time. I know it's a lot of information, but that's what it comes down to. That's what arm strength comes down to, velocity, and being able to be consistent. So that's the first tip, hip and shoulder dissociation. So now, We're going to take a look at Josh Allen here. And the next tip that I want to talk about is how to have a perfect base in the pocket, okay? So a lot of people talk about that, right? You don't want your feet too narrow. You don't want your feet too wide. You want to be like you're on a skateboard, surfboard, however you want to think of it. Some people call it the platform, which makes a lot of sense, but then you get into the off-platform throws and it doesn't make as much sense. So you see Allen throwing right here, throws an absolute dime downfield. Now you can see probably the best base in the league, in my opinion, is Allen, and also the most improved base since he was in college is probably Allen, because when you watch him at Wyoming, right, and watch him even at the Senior Bowl, I did a video on this a couple weeks back, his base is probably like, let's say these are his feet right here, his base is probably super close together. And when you try to transfer weight off of your back leg and you try to drive off your back leg and your base is like this, what do you think your front stride is going to do? It's going to go wide like a pitcher, because that's just the timing of your sequence, but your upper half is going to stay the same. So what's going to happen is your shoulders and everything are going to get out ahead of yourself. And what I mean by that is you see when Allen goes to throw, right? Again, he's back leg loaded. He's got more weight on this back leg, and he's focused on driving off this back leg. You see how he's pushing off that back leg to create that weight transfer. And we had talked about that weight transfer with Rodgers, right? But that base being wide allows that front foot to get down. Imagine it's like a pitcher. It's the same kind of push as a pitcher from this back leg, because you're trying to transfer weight, right? You're trying to get weight to that front leg. You're trying to get some energy going at the target. So when you're in a base like that, if your feet are super narrow and you decide to push, your stride's going to go long, because it's still going to hit the grass at the same spot, but it's just the wrong timing of the foot strike. And the timing of the foot strike will throw off your kinetic sequence, which is just your upper half doing that, like that rotation of the shoulders, getting back to this opposite L angle. You guys all probably know what I'm talking about, because the timing of the sequence, you want to have that front shoulder closed as that front foot gets down so your hips can rip you through and you have that whip. So the base ties directly into that hip and shoulder dissociation that we talked about, right? But you see, because Allen's base is wide, that front stride can actually get down the same time your front shoulder closes, right? And so we're able to produce ground force, we're able to transfer weight, and the motion is able to be cleaner, and I'm not swinging my whole front side out of the throw. Because when you guys get out ahead of yourself, what I mean by that is, right, the sequence of the throw should be front stride, then hips, then shoulders, then ball. The football chases your hip. The ball goes behind your back hip. It should chase your hip. So what that means is that's the sequence. So your front foot's got to get down, hips bring the ball through, and that's how we create torque if my front side stays disciplined. But again, reason 2, perfect base. If your base is too narrow, your feet are too close together, throws off the timing, because that stride will be long if you're pushing from that back leg to transfer weight. Okay, so let's watch the thing again, full speed one more time. Great job having a good base in the pocket. Great job transferring weight here, getting the ball out of his hands and having that nice stay the same, right? So it should be the same sequence, same base like we were talking about, same foot stride that we were talking about. You see again, like the other clips we were talking about, his shoulders are closed as his front foot gets down. But what is his front shoulder doing? It is arced up in the air. It's like almost his whole upper half is arced up in the air. So he could throw and get this thing up and over on this platform. What I mean by platform is you got like 3 levels of throws. You got a 1 ball, you got a 2 ball, and then you got a 3 ball, right? So now that 1 and 2, you don't necessarily need all the shoulder arc in the world, but when you're trying to get this thing to drop in the bucket, right? That front shoulder arc, when your hip decides to rip through, it helps you rotate like almost up and over. Now, a lot of people asked me when I posted this a little while ago, how do you feel about his arm dipping far back like this? I don't necessarily, I don't personally like it. I mean, obviously it works for him. I think that a lot of other quarterbacks have this problem simply because they lift the ball. It's not necessarily, they don't get to hear before this dips behind their head. They don't get their hips through before it dips behind. And I think it shows how much mobility he has in his shoulder and his rotator cuff here, which I don't think it's a huge issue for him, because of where he gets to first. A lot of quarterbacks have that thing dip behind their head right here. So like their hips won't be rotating through. It'll dip behind their head, and then their hips go through, and that puts a lot of stress on their shoulder. But when he's already rotating through like this, and he's already gotten his hips parallel, shoulders parallel to the target, and he's in that square position, I don't think that's a huge issue, right? And from this angle, it just might look a little bit worse than it is. But now, since he's arcing that shoulder, what can you do to get the nose of the ball to turn over? And it all comes down to hip drive, so how much you could rotate with your hips, being able to drive your hip through before the football, and then his snap of the wrist at the top. So you see when he flicks his wrist, it's almost like he's shooting a free throw at the top of this thing. So you want to make sure that you arc that front shoulder, your hip drive goes up and over, and you're snapping your wrist at the top like you're grabbing something off the top shelf, or you're shooting a free throw. Let's watch this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Mahomes getting this thing to go up and over, okay? So now the next clip, we're going to be looking at Trevor Lawrence here, and we're just going to be talking about a little bit of pocket movement, okay? So we're going to be talking about how QBs should move in the pocket. That's what I feel the next tip should be, and how your left foot wants to move first. Now, that sounds a little unorthodox to a lot of people, but let's watch this clip by Lawrence. So you see when he drops back here, he's having to move in the pocket. Look what moves first. It's his left foot. And then he moves it again, left foot. So right when he hits the right leg, he can drive. You guys got to think about this. No quarterback is going to be, if Lawrence went like this and he went with his right leg first, he's not going to be able to throw off in one step because this game, everybody is moving so damn fast. And so many quarterback coaches screw this up for guys is they'll teach them that kick step with their back leg. That back leg, you're going to have to take 3 steps. If Lawrence goes back leg here and he goes right leg first and he just hits the right leg and he tries to throw right off that step, he's going to be so off balance. He's going to have no weight transfer because his momentum's going towards the sideline and he's got to throw. He's going to be hunched over and he's going to be inconsistent. If you go left leg first and you are light on your left leg, you can hit that right leg. And the second you hit that right leg, you can push and get the front foot down. It's 3 steps rather than 4. So you see how he goes 1, 2, 3. It's out. Now imagine if he went back leg, he would have to go right, left, right again, then left. It'd be 4 steps. That's 1 extra step. No, but I dare you to try it going full speed, going 1 step and then throwing. It's going to feel like the most awkward, uncomfortable thing in the world. But you know what you can do going full speed? You can move your left leg first, then hit your right leg, and then be able to drive, okay? So it's all about being able to be light on your front leg. So right when your right leg hits, you could drive, transfer weight, and that could rip your hips through on this throw, and then you're able to shoot this thing downfield. It's a great job moving by Lawrence. Watch the thing again. So that's tip 4, fellas. What foot should you move with in the pocket first? It's your left one. Your right one should trail closely behind. It shouldn't be a kick step, but you're light on the left leg, so you're able to transfer weight right away and get this ball out of your hands. So now we're going to be looking at this last clip here. So tip 5, what foot should you step with on the run, and what do you need to do on the run? So we're going to be looking at Zach Wilson here. He does conflict climb, 2 steps, and drives this thing downfield, okay? So now this is a tough throw. This ain't an easy throw. We're not even going to focus on the pocket movement because this is something that you guys can focus on. But on the run, what you guys want to make sure that you do, the step before your throwing leg step needs to get your hips to the target. So you see how Wilson, he points that toe in the direction of the throw. He points the toe towards the middle of the field so his hips can get there, right? It's all about being able to keep your hips square to the target. Now, when he steps with his right leg, you want to point your toes in the direction of the throw. So you point your toes in the direction of the throw because your left one kind of loads you up. Your right one steps, and that gets your hips going at the target. And as you step with the right leg, what do you want to combine that with? You want to combine that with great shoulder rotation. So you see how, I know this is a little bit blurry, but you see how he rotates back with his shoulders as he steps. Now, when your left leg kicks through, that's that snap of the motion. That's that torque that we talk about. So it's a lot like that hip and shoulder dissociation. You want to step with your throwing side leg in the direction of the throw, rotate that front shoulder so you have that coil and you kick through and you keep that front hand nice and tight to your frame. You don't swing out. So when you go to release this ball, your shoulders and your hips are square to the target that we're throwing to, okay? It's the same principles on the run as throwing from the pocket. Let's watch this thing again, full speed one more time. So he gives us a little conflict climb, 2 steps, step in the direction of the throw, and make sure we load my hips.